Hello everybody, it is me, Alexthehunted. 1950s American B-movies are an absolute goldmine of absolute crap. This was during the time when the film companies actually owned the theatres, so they could put out whatever cheaply made crap they wanted. Because it didn't matter, because they could control what the people saw. This was the era that gave us the Deadly Mantis, the Screaming Skull, the Killer Shrews, Attack of the Deadly Leeches. Basically, 3/4 of the stuff that appeared on MST3K came from this era. And it also gave us what is widely considered the worst movie ever made, Plan 9 from Outer Space. So basically what I'm saying is, this movie is pretty bad. You see, Godzilla actually made quite a bit of money in the American box office, so of course film companies were just pretty much straight away wanting to get a piece of that giant monster money, so they decided to make their own movie. And oh boy, people make fun of Japanese movies for being cheaply made and basically being guys in rubber suits, but compared to this, oh boy. This is the Giant Claw. Like the new camera? Also like the new additions to the shelf? Yeah. So our movie begins like a lot of 1950s B-movies do, with military propaganda.
Distant early warning radar, sensitive electronic devices to detect the presence of objects in the sky, including bombing planes and guided missiles.
This was when the Cold War was just starting to get serious and America had just lost the Korean War. So this movie was in the period where they felt like they had to reassure the citizens that America was well protected from any attack the Soviets might give them. They especially love to tell us about the miracle of radar. In fact, half the characters in the movie have something to do with the radar.
How about Mademoiselle Mathematician? She got enough numbers to feed into her machines yet?
A woman doing maths. She probably just sees it as a shopping list. So our group are running a radar test flight to make sure the system is working right. When their fighter pilot called Mitchell, who doesn't work for the military, he's actually just an electrician who just so happens to be able to fly a fighter jet, and is also allowed to fly said fighter jet during an incredibly expensive military test of technology that they really weren't sure about yet. Anyway, we get a roll call of our cast from a narrator who won't shut up. In fact, he even talks over actors pretty much all the time when they could have just been delivering the lines themselves, but no, the narrator has to say them. When suddenly Mitchell sees a UFO that was as big as a battleship fly past his cockpit. Terrified, he contacts the radar crew as our narrator tells us what happens.
The radar officer replied that it was impossible. According to the radar scope, except for Mitch's plane, there wasn't a single solitary object of any nature whatsoever.
When they could have just let the actors talk, but no, the narrator just has to tell us what happens as they scramble their greatest stock footage to investigate. However, when Mitchell lands and sees his commanding officer, he is berated because the commander thinks it was some kind of joke because 3 of their radars picked up nothing and now one of their interceptor stock footage planes has gone missing. Mitchell insists he saw something, but they don't believe him because this is the typical monster movie cliche of the military not believing our average Joe or scientist, or in this case electrician, who can fly a fighter jet, because our military are always right until they are wrong. But in this case, wouldn't they be more inclined to believe him since he reported spotting a UFO and now one of their interceptor planes to find the UFO has disappeared? You know, that would just be seen as more than just a coincidence. But maybe it wasn't a UFO. Maybe it was a battleship. That's all they seem to call this thing throughout the entire movie, a flying battleship. Even our narrator calls it a battleship. And later Mitchell even says that it looks like a battleship.
A battleship, not that it was a battleship.
Something as big as a battleship.
Like we're hitting a battleship with a slingshot.
A flying battleship. Flying battleship.
Flying battleship.
Flying battleship.
Flying battleship. Flying battleship.
And, well, later you'll be questioning Mitchell's eyesight because, yeah, a battleship is something that it doesn't look like, but then we'll save that for later. Also, why would they say it's as big as a battleship when battleships don't fly? Well, apart from anime and the Avengers. Why wouldn't they say it's as big as like an airship or a zeppelin, since they're more accurate and they were around at this time and they're huge? So Mitchell and the radar lady named Sally, having known that 2 planes have gone missing in this area and have no idea what is causing it, get on a plane in the sky because they all seem to be wearing their red shirts today. So as Mitchell is talking to the pilot sees something in the air, saying it's a UFO, and suddenly the plane is attacked, shaking and rocking, causing the pilot to smash his head into his pasta and sauce, making the model plane crash in a ball of flames, and our heroes make it out but have no idea what caused the crash. So they're found by a French Canadian who takes them to his farm to recover, and they immediately start drinking because, well, he's French of course. As they drink, they start to talk about the flying battleship. Suddenly, the animals start making noises, clearly startled and scared by something. The farmer goes to check, the lights then start flickering, and soon we hear him screaming in terror. As they rush him inside, panicking, he says he saw the devil, with the head of a wolf and the body of a woman. Again, keep that in mind.
You probably saw an eagle, Pierre.
Oh, no. It was La Cacaña. La Cacaña.
Oh, I remember. Now I read it somewhere. It's a superstition, a legend that the French Canadians started and came across the border with.
Yeah, it vaguely rings a small bell with me, too. It was probably just the lightning in the storm, Pierre. You just imagined the whole thing.
No.
Oh, you Canadians with your folklores and your myths. Us Americans are so much more sophisticated. We don't believe in such fiction like that. Have you tried reading the Bible? That's the real truth in our world. After that, our heroes get on another plane to take them back to the civilized USA. As Sally sleeps, Mitchell does, well, this. Ha! He forced a kiss on a sleeping woman. Our hero, everyone. So after Sally jokes off the fact that, well, he forced himself upon her, he tries to force a kiss on her again. But then Mitchell makes a discovery that all the attacks were made in a sort of pattern. A rather stupid pattern, you see, because he plots down all the attacks on a map and Sally can't see this pattern. Mitchell acts surprised that she can't see it. Now looking at this, what sort of pattern do you see? I just see basically straight line points from each attack. But no, apparently that's wrong, because the pattern is this. That's right, a spiral. Like, yeah, a spiral. I gotta say, that's really a big, huge stretch. I mean, really, couldn't you have just drawn a straight line from point to point? Also, you would think that something like this that they would bring up would have great major effects to the plot, but you would be wrong, because after this scene, it is never brought up again. It doesn't affect the plot in any way. It is entirely pointless. In fact, this entire scene is pointless, because all they do is argue about if this flying battleship is real or not, which they were doing less than 5 minutes ago. Well, they did do something new, because in this scene they did show that our hero likes to force kisses on sleeping women. Anyway, our narrator takes over again, talking about some random people we have never seen before, flying in some plane. So we know they're all gonna die. And it looks like death is coming its way, because the UFO battleship returns, and this is where we get the reveal of our monster. Actually, before I do reveal the monster, I'm going to let you in with a bit of trivia. You see, apparently, our filmmakers were going to hire the legend Ray Harryhausen to design and make their giant monster, but decided at the last minute to hire a Mexican company to do the same for much cheaper. So, just before I reveal this monster, keep in mind that they could have got the master and grandfather of stop motion animation to animate their monster, but instead decided to do something for much cheaper. Now let's see their results.
A bird as big as a battleship, circling and preparing to attack the CAB plane.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is our monster. That is the giant claw. One of the stupidest looking monsters of all time, and one of the worst special effects monsters of all time. I mean, it is just a stiff, barely able to move puppet with huge buggy eyes that can't close, a mohawk from the yet-to-be-invented heavy metal scene, and oh my god, the roar. It sounds like a high-pitched car horn that is being pressed over and over and over. The only bit of detail they got in this thing is that the nostrils flare a bit. So yeah, I mean, it can barely flap its wings, but it can slightly move its nose, so that's something. Rumours are that the guy who played Mitchell went to the film's premiere, and when the reveal of the monster happened, the audience burst out laughing and he walked out of the screening in sheer embarrassment. So anyway, the giant claw destroys the plane and eats all the passengers as they try to escape. So the next day the military call upon Mitchell because the pilot of the downed plane gave the exact same report that he did of a UFO battleship Bird. So Mitchell and Sally have the idea to send up giant balloons with cameras on so they can see if they can take a picture of this so-called battleship. And soon we see the results of their search.
Something's coming up now.
Oh my god, it can take selfies! Also, you gotta love the actress who plays Sally's look of shock in this scene. I mean, it's not really shock, more, oh Christ, this is the movie, I'm in shock. So the military see the film and start to think of a plan to deal with the giant claw, and try to figure out why the radar isn't spotting the giant bird. All the while, the general has his back to the camera throughout the entire scene, maybe to hide the shame on his face because of what he's having to say. So the military send out a whole fleet of stock footage to try and find the bird. And soon they do find it, and are ordered to shoot it down. The general confident that the missiles will be able to shoot it down. We get a terribly edited dogfight between the claw and the stock footage, while also having shots of the pilots inside the cabins just doing stuff, as the missiles appear to be ineffective against the bird, and soon the planes are taken down. And it's kind of telling of how lazy and cheap this movie is, when the planes in the stock footage are not the same as the model planes that the claw destroys.
Mission's a washout. We're gonna head for... No! It's coming after me! No!
It's destroying them, and then it's going to destroy me. Oh my god! So our heroes go to a scientist who thinks he knows what the bird is, as he explains about matter and antimatter, and that the bird isn't a bird, it's in fact an alien from another galaxy of antimatter, and can create an antimatter barrier that can stop itself being hit by anything that the military throw at it. Which also explains why it can't be picked up by radar, because the barrier stops it somehow. And wow, I mean, people say that Japan come up with some ludicrous explanations for their giant monsters, but wow, this really is just ridiculous. The general rightfully questions if the scientist just, well, made it all up, and the scientist doesn't really give them much reason to believe him, only the fact that he just figured this out from, well, the wreckage that they collected, and, you know, he's a scientist. So the narrator interrupts again to tell us about the giant battleship Claw being spotted around the world.
Even then, the bird revealed itself to the world at large, and complacency quickly turned to panic.
Many were seen rolling around dying of laughter. Anyway, Mitchell is busy trying to figure out a way to stop the monster when Sally comes over to tell him that he's working too hard. Yes, she's telling him off for trying to find a way to stop the giant killer battleship bird. Lady, no offence, but you kind of gotta get your priorities straight. Anyway, Sally questions why the bird came to Earth. There must be a reason for it. When they figure out the bird has been flying around destroying things because it's going to make a nest and lay an egg. So wait, does that mean that the giant claw in this movie is a female? Oh god, what do the males look like?
We have tried every weapon in the arsenals of the mightiest armies on Earth. They have proven worse than useless.
But we didn't have the budget and the stock footage to show that. So as the giant claw attacks all the stock footage, Mitchell and Sally head back to the French-Canadian's farm to find the giant claw's nest with an egg inside, just as the claw arrives. The Canadian, letting his French side get the better of him, runs away, so Sally and Mitchell have to be the ones to destroy the egg, with their guns, which makes no sense given the fact that apparently they just explained that the giant claw has an antimatter barrier that stops anything hitting it. So why doesn't the egg have an antimatter barrier? Or why doesn't the claw put an antimatter barrier around the egg? I mean, that doesn't make much sense. Anyway, the egg is destroyed and the claw gets really pissed and tries to kill off our heroes, but settles instead for the farmer, as our heroes don't seem to give a crap and they just forget about him. In fact, they do even better. Instead of checking his body and, mourning his death, They steal his car. It's on their way back that they run into the most terrifying and evil thing in 1950s America. No, not the giant claw. Worse. Teenagers.
Hey, Daddy-o! Get the tin can off the road! Come on, man! Dig you later, Gator! Hey, Daddy-o, don't call us! We'll call you!
This writer was clearly down with what the kids of those days said, Daddy-o. So the giant claw comes and kills the teenagers, saving America from the horror of youths. So after that, Mitchell and Sally make their way back to the scientist with an idea to kill the bird. And it's the classic scene of talking about scientists to defeat the monster when it's clear the writer had no idea what he was talking about.
The chamber was bombarded with high-speed particles. Result? A photograph of a trail made by what is known as a mu meson. You probably know about it, Dr. Neumann.
Yes, the formation of a temporary mesic atom, the mu meson with a hydrogen nucleus.
Right. Which means that in a mesic atom, the electrons revolve around a nucleus at just a small fraction of the ordinary distance in the normal atom. The mesic atom is extremely small. Small enough to sift through the electron defenses of the ordinary atom and fuse with its nuclei.
Atoms of matter or antimatter.
Right, Doc. Now, if this thing of mine works, and we can get close, real close, and bombard that bird's antimatter energy shield with a stream of mesic atoms, I think we can destroy that shield.
Anyway, as they get their plans together, the giant claw continues to terrorize the world, attacking everything, even going so far to destroy a Hornby train set. So as our heroes work hard, they soon find the atom thing they need to take down the barrier. They rush to make it a weapon and fit it to a plane, as the bird arrives in New York and destroys the Empire State Building.
It's only a model.
So they have to hurry and finish the weapon on the plane as they try to get the battleship claw's attention, succeeding, however the weapon isn't finished yet. So they have to go as fast as they can to possibly outrun the claw. Ignoring the fact that earlier it had no problem catching up with a fighter jet, but now it seems to be having trouble catching up with a propeller plane. Anyway, as the claw gets closer and closer, Mitchell finishes the weapon just in time, shooting the claw with the anti-antimatter blast, destroying the claw's barrier and leaving it open to attack. So the military shoot it down with one missile, killing her and, well, actually that's pretty much it. The general just tells our heroes that they got it and, well, the movie ends with no real wrap-up. The end. And that was The Giant Claw, slated as one of the worst monster movies of all time, and to be honest, I don't kind of see why. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is a bad movie, but one of the worst monster movies of all time? I don't know. I mean, it's bad, but compared to some of the stuff that did come out in this era, it's nowhere near as bad. It's pretty competent in comparison. I mean, yes, the monster does look ridiculous, but I mean, it's nicely acted. The characters are kind of likable, apart from that one fact of, forcing a kiss on a woman, but apart from that, it's pretty good in that respect with acting and characters. I mean, it's ridiculously cheaply made. The monster does look ridiculous, and that is basically its only real claim to fame, is how ridiculous this monster looks. I mean, without it, this movie would be kind of forgettable, and I kind of struggle to think of things to talk about it, to be honest. I'm kind of disappointed in a way. Yes, the monster looks ridiculous. It's a gigantic mutated chicken bird from space. Okay, yeah, apart from that, there's not much really to talk about. I'm kind of disappointed, really. So yeah, I don't really recommend seeing this movie because it's not really that good, but it's not really that bad. Just like you, I think I'm kind of disappointed. So anyway, let's go back to the wheel and I'll see you guys next time when I review Rodan. Now we get to see what the Japanese can do with a giant flying monster. And keep this in mind for when we see Rodan. that Rodan came out a year before the Giant Claw. I'll see you guys then.